The coffee was already cold, and the fluorescent light above my desk was buzzing, a sound that usually just faded into the background hum of the office. But today, it was a drill bit boring into my skull. I stared at the email. It was from Robert, my boss, and the subject line was a single chilling word: urgent. I clicked it open, and the blood drained from my face. It wasn't a project update or a meeting request. It was a formal, written reprimand. Not just a slap on the wrist, but a detailed, vicious takedown of my performance over the last 6 months, citing missed deadlines I knew I'd met and errors I knew weren't mine. He even attached screenshots of a project I hadn't even been assigned to, claiming it was my failure. My hands started shaking so badly, I had to grip the edge of the desk. He's doing it. He's actually doing it. I looked up, across the cubicle farm, and saw Robert's office door was closed. The glass wall was frosted, but I could see his silhouette pacing inside, talking on his phone, his posture aggressive, like a predator circling its prey. He'd been gunning for me for months, ever since I got the promotion he thought should have gone to his nephew, Kyle. I'd laughed it off at first, classic corporate politics, but this was different. This was a paper trail designed to get me fired, and not just fired, but fired for cause, which would tank my career in this industry. I leaned back, trying to breathe, the cold coffee cup leaving a damp ring on the cheap laminate. I thought about my mortgage, about the long hours I'd put in, the weekends I'd sacrificed for this company. And for what? To be systematically destroyed by a petty, insecure man. The injustice of it hit me like a physical blow. I felt the heat rising in my chest, not of panic, but of a cold, hard resolve. I opened my calendar. The annual budget review meeting was in 2 weeks. Robert was presenting the final numbers to the CEO and the board. That meeting was his Super Bowl. It was the one time a year he got to stand in front of the people who mattered and take credit for everyone else's work. I knew instinctively that if I was going to fight back, it had to be before that meeting. If I was fired, I'd have no leverage. If I was still an employee, I had access. I spent the rest of the day in a haze, pretending to work, but every click of the mouse was a calculated move. I started with the email itself. The attached evidence was a project called Project Chimera. I'd heard the name whispered around the office, but it was a black ops project run exclusively by Robert and Kyle. No one else had access. I opened the shared drive, navigating through the labyrinthine folders. Robert was meticulous about covering his tracks, but he was also arrogant. He assumed no one would ever look. I found the main folder for Project Chimera, and to my surprise, it wasn't locked down as tightly as I expected. He'd used a standard group permission that technically I was still a part of. I started downloading. Not just the spreadsheets he'd used to frame me, but everything. Hundreds of files, financial projections, vendor contracts, internal memos. It took hours, running the downloads in the background, minimizing the windows every time someone walked past my cubicle. The adrenaline was a steady, low-level hum. I felt like a spy in my own office. Around 7 p.m., the office was mostly empty. I was the last one left on the floor. The only sound, the whirring of the server room and the relentless buzzing of the light. I opened the first file I downloaded, a massive, complex Excel sheet labeled Q4 Vendor Reconciliation, Private. I wasn't a financial analyst, but I knew enough to spot a red flag. And this wasn't a red flag. It was a crimson banner waving in a hurricane. The sheet detailed payments to a shell company called Phoenix Solutions. The payments were huge, hundreds of thousands of dollars, far exceeding the budget for any single vendor. But the services listed were vague: consulting, logistics, software integration. I cross-referenced the payment dates with Robert's travel calendar, which was also in the folder. Every time a payment was made to Phoenix Solutions, Robert was out of the office, supposedly at a client summit in another state. Then I found the real smoking gun, a small, almost hidden PDF in a subfolder labeled Legal. It was the incorporation document for Phoenix Solutions. The sole director and owner was listed as Kyle Robertson. Not Robert's nephew, Kyle, but Robert's son. Robert had given his son a slightly different last name to hide the connection, but the address was the same as Robert's summer house. My hands stopped shaking. The heat in my chest turned into a block of ice. This wasn't just corporate politics. This was embezzlement. Robert wasn't just trying to get me fired, he was trying to cover up a massive financial crime. And my termination was a necessary step to eliminate a potential witness who had access to the system. I looked at the clock. 8:30 p.m. I had enough evidence to ruin him, but I needed a plan, a quiet surgical strike. If I went to HR, Robert would deny everything and the evidence would disappear before anyone could verify it. I had to go higher, much higher. I packed my laptop bag, the weight of the external hard drive containing all the files feeling like a brick of gold. As I walked past Robert's office, I paused. The pacing had stopped. The light was off. He was gone. He was probably at home celebrating his successful first step in destroying my life. I walked out of the building and into the cool night air. The city lights were bright, but all I could see was the glow of my laptop screen and the name Kyle Robertson. The game had changed. This wasn't about saving my job anymore. This was about justice, and I was holding the loaded gun. The next morning, I called in sick. I couldn't risk being in the office. I sat at my kitchen table, the evidence spread across 2 monitors. I started building a narrative, a timeline of Robert's actions, cross-referencing the Phoenix Solutions payments with the fraudulent expense reports I found. The total amount was staggering, $1.8 million over 2 years. I knew the CEO, Mr. Henderson, was a man of integrity, but he was also a man who hated public scandal. I couldn't just dump the files on his desk. I needed to present it in a way that was undeniable, yet discreet. I needed a lawyer, a good one, but I couldn't afford a good one. I called my old college roommate, Sarah. She was a corporate defense attorney at a big firm, the kind of person who knew where all the bodies were buried. I told her I had a hypothetical situation involving a massive corporate fraud and a boss trying to frame me. She listened patiently, her voice calm and professional. Hypothetically, she said, you need to secure that evidence, and you need to contact the company's General Counsel, not the CEO. The GC has a legal obligation to investigate. The CEO just has a business obligation to avoid bad press. She gave me the name of the General Counsel, Eleanor Vance, a legend in the company, known for her ice-cold demeanor and absolute loyalty to the firm's legal standing. I spent the next 2 days preparing a single, encrypted document. It was a 15-page report, complete with charts, timelines, and the key evidence. I didn't include every file, just enough to prove the case beyond a shadow of a doubt. I called Eleanor Vance's office and told her assistant I had a matter of extreme legal urgency that could not be discussed over the phone. The assistant was hesitant, but I used a phrase Sarah had taught me. This involves a potential breach of fiduciary duty by a senior executive. That got her attention. I had a meeting scheduled for 9 a.m. the day before Robert's big budget review. I walked into the corporate headquarters, not to my desk, but to the executive floor. The air was different up there, thicker, quieter, smelling of expensive leather and fear. Eleanor Vance's office was all glass and steel, overlooking the entire city. She was sitting behind a massive mahogany desk, a woman in her late 50s with silver hair pulled back tightly, her expression unreadable. I sat down, my heart pounding a rhythm against my ribs. I didn't waste time. I didn't mention the reprimand or the frame job. I just placed the encrypted USB drive on her desk. "Miss Vance," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "I have evidence of a systematic 2-year-long embezzlement scheme totaling $1.8 million run by Robert and his son through a shell company called Phoenix Solutions. This evidence is a breach of fiduciary duty and a massive legal liability for the company." She didn't flinch. She didn't even look at the drive. She just looked at me, her eyes like chips of blue ice. "And why," she asked, her voice a low, dangerous purr, "are you bringing this to me and not to the authorities?" Because, I replied, meeting her gaze, I am an employee who values this company and I believe in internal resolution. I also believe that the person who uncovered this should be protected from the person who committed the crime. She finally picked up the drive. Give me the password. I gave it to her. She plugged it into a secure terminal and for the next 10 minutes, she read. The only sound was the faint click of her mouse. I watched her face, waiting for a reaction, but there was none. She was a wall. Finally, she closed the file. She pulled the drive out and placed it in a small metal box on her desk. You may go, she said. Do not discuss this with anyone. Do not come back to the office until I call you. Your employment status is on administrative leave, effective immediately, with full pay. I stood up, feeling lighter than I had in months. I had fired the shot. The war was over, but the explosion hadn't happened yet. I walked out, leaving Robert's fate sealed in that metal box. I spent the next week at home, glued to my phone, waiting. The silence was deafening. I imagined Robert, oblivious, preparing his presentation, polishing his lies. The budget review meeting was scheduled for Friday. On Thursday, I got a call. It wasn't Eleanor Vance, it was Sarah. Did you see the news? She asked, her voice tight with excitement. No, what news? Robert didn't make it to the budget review. He was escorted out of the building this morning by 2 security guards and a man from the legal department. The company issued a statement about serious financial irregularities and immediate termination. The stock took a small hit, but the damage is contained. I leaned against the kitchen counter, a slow, satisfied smile spreading across my face. He was gone. The man who tried to ruin my life was now a footnote in a corporate press release. But the story wasn't over, not quite. I still had my job, but I had a new goal. I wanted to see the look on his face. I wanted him to know who did it. I went back to the office the following Monday. The air was electric. Robert's office was empty, the glass wall clear, his desk stripped bare. Everyone was whispering. Kyle was gone too. I sat down at my desk and the buzzing light didn't bother me anymore. I felt a sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. Then, my phone rang. It was Eleanor Vance. Come to my office, she commanded. I walked back up to the executive floor. She was standing by the window, looking out at the city. She turned to me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Respect. The board has decided to make a change, she said. Robert's position is being eliminated. We are creating a new role, Director of Internal Compliance and Vendor Oversight. It reports directly to me. It comes with a significant raise, a corner office, and a mandate to ensure this never happens again. She paused, a thin, sharp smile touching her lips. You're the only person who knows where all the bodies are buried. The job is yours. I didn't hesitate. I accept. The revenge was sweet, but the promotion was the real victory. I didn't just save my job. I took his. I walked out of her office, a director, and went straight to my new corner office. It was beautiful. It was quiet. It was everything I had worked for. But I still wanted him to know. I found Robert's personal email address, the one he used for his son's shell company. I drafted a short, anonymous email. It contained only one attachment, the original fraudulent reprimand he had sent me, the one that started it all. I hit send. A minute later, I got a bounce back. Address not found. He had already been locked out of everything. The satisfaction was fleeting. He was gone, a ghost. I looked out the window of my new office, over the city. I had won. I had everything. But the story wasn't quite finished. I still had the original hard drive, the one with every single file, the one that could still blow the whole thing wide open. I had to decide what to do with it. I had the power now, the power to forgive or the power to destroy. I opened my new company laptop. The first thing I did was check the company's new vendor list. Phoenix Solutions was gone, but a new name had appeared, Integrity Solutions. I clicked on the incorporation document. The sole director was listed as Eleanor Vance. My blood ran cold. The ice block in my chest shattered. The contract details. Integrity Solutions was now handling all the logistics and software integration that Phoenix Solutions used to handle. The payments were slightly smaller, but still massive. I realized with a sickening lurch that I hadn't exposed a crime. I had simply facilitated a hostile takeover of a lucrative embezzlement scheme. Robert was gone, but the system was still in place, and I was now the director of compliance, the perfect shield for the new operation. I was the guard dog, paid handsomely to look the other way. I was trapped. I had traded my integrity for a corner office. The buzzing light in my old cubicle was nothing compared to the silence in this new, expensive prison. I had to find a way out. I had to expose the real crime. I had to use the one thing I still had, the original hard drive. I knew I couldn't go to the authorities. They would see me as an accomplice. I had to go public. I had to leak the whole thing. But how and to whom? I had to be careful. This time, I was fighting the entire company, not just one man. I was fighting the system I had just been promoted to protect. I opened the hard drive one last time. I started compiling a new report, a final report. This one wasn't for Eleanor Vance. This one was for the world. I had to be ready to lose everything, but I couldn't live with the silence of this corner office. I couldn't be the guard dog. I had to be the avenger. I found a secure, anonymous file sharing service. I uploaded the entire archive. I wrote a short, cryptic message and attached the link. I needed to send it to someone who would not only publish it, but would also understand the gravity of the situation. A journalist, a financial journalist. I searched for the most aggressive, no-holds-barred investigative reporter I could find. I found one, Marcus Thorne, at the Global Financial Times. He was famous for taking down corporate giants. I drafted the email. Subject, the $2.8 million compliance director. The body was simple. Check the attached link. The truth is in the files. The new director of compliance is the key. I hit send. I didn't wait for a bounce back. I didn't wait for a reply. I immediately wiped the hard drive. Clean, physically destroying the evidence. I was free. I was ruined, but I was free. I stood up, walked out of my corner office, and didn't look back. I knew the moment that email landed, my career, my job, and my reputation were gone. But I had my soul back. I walked out of the building, not as a director, but as a whistleblower. The city lights were still bright, but they didn't feel like a prison anymore. They felt like a spotlight. I knew the firestorm was coming. I was ready for it. I had done the right thing. I was sitting in a small coffee shop downtown, watching the news on a tiny TV screen above the counter. The headline flashed, Global Financial Times exposes massive corporate fraud. The company's stock was plummeting. Eleanor Vance was being questioned by the FBI. Robert was a footnote. I was a ghost. I finished my coffee. I had no job, no money, and a massive legal battle ahead of me. But I had the satisfaction of knowing I had taken down the entire rotten structure. I had ruined my boss's career, and then I had ruined the career of the woman who tried to use me. I had won the war, but I had lost the battle, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I picked up my bag, ready to face the music. The world was about to get very loud. Drop a comment with your platform of choice. Thumbs up if you learned something new, repost this post with friends, and subscribe for more social media comments. The silence in the coffee shop was a lie. I could feel the tremors of the earthquake I had just caused. I knew the moment that email hit Marcus Thorne's inbox, the clock started ticking on my life as I knew it. I had to disappear. Not because I was guilty, but because I was the only witness left standing. I walked out, not toward my apartment, but toward the train station. I had a small backpack with 3 days of clothes, my old laptop, and a burner phone. I didn't check the news again. I didn't need to. I knew the story was spreading like wildfire. I took the first train heading north, a regional line that stopped in every small town. I watched the city skyline shrink. But you have to come in. I hung up. I couldn't trust the authorities yet, not when I had just exposed a system that was so deeply corrupt. I needed to be sure. I spent the next week moving from one small town to the next, always paying in cash, always using the burner phone. I felt like a character in a spy movie, constantly looking over my shoulder. The paranoia was exhausting, but it kept me alive. One night, I was in a diner in a remote town in Maine. I was reading a local newspaper, trying to blend in, when I saw a small article on page 12. It was about a local man, a retired accountant, who had been found dead in his home. The cause of death was listed as a heart attack. The man's name was Mr. Henderson, the CEO. My blood ran cold again. Mr. Henderson was the man of integrity I had trusted, the man who hated public scandal, the man who had been the only obstacle to Eleanor Vance's power. I hadn't just exposed a crime, I had exposed a power vacuum. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that his death was not a coincidence. The system I had fought was fighting back. I called Sarah again. "Mr. Henderson is dead," I said. "I know," she replied, her voice low. "The official story is a heart attack, but the timing is suspicious. You need to come in, now. You are not safe out there." "I'm not coming in," I said. "I need to find out what happened to Mr. Henderson. I need to find the real truth." I started my own investigation. I used my old laptop and the motel Wi-Fi. I searched for everything I could find about Mr. Henderson. I found his obituary, his social media, his family. I found a small detail in his obituary. He was a member of a private, exclusive golf club called the Cypress Club. I knew Robert was a member of that club. I knew Eleanor Vance was a member. It was a place where the city's elite conducted their real business. I drove to the club. It was a sprawling, manicured estate, guarded by a high fence and a security gate. I couldn't get in. I needed a plan. I remembered a conversation I had with Robert months ago. He was complaining about the club's new security system. He said the only way to bypass it was to use the service entrance, which was only guarded by a single elderly man named Frank. I waited until midnight. I parked my car a mile away and walked through the woods, guided by the light of the moon. I found the service entrance. Frank was sitting in a small booth reading a paperback novel. I walked up to the window. "Frank," I said, "I'm with the catering company. We forgot a delivery for the morning meeting." Frank looked up, his eyes tired. "No delivery tonight, son. Come back in the morning." "I know," I said, "but this is a special order for Mr. Henderson. It's his favorite scotch. He's very particular." I held up a bottle of expensive scotch I had bought at a liquor store. Frank's eyes widened. He loved scotch. "Mr. Henderson is not here," Frank said, his voice hesitant. "I know," I said, "but his wife is. She asked me to drop it off at his private locker. I just need to get past the gate." Frank hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "Fine, but you're on a timer. I'm not supposed to do this." He opened the gate. I drove in, my heart pounding. I parked the car and walked toward the main clubhouse. I found the locker room. Mr. Henderson's locker was marked with a small brass plaque. I picked the lock. It was surprisingly easy. Inside, I found a golf bag, a pair of shoes, and a small leather-bound journal. I opened the journal. It was Mr. Henderson's private diary. I started reading. The entries were a detailed account of his final months. He knew about Robert's scheme. He knew about Eleanor Vance's involvement. He was planning to expose them both at the budget review meeting. He had even written a letter to the FBI detailing everything. But the final entry was the most chilling. It was dated the day before his death. "Eleanor knows. She cornered me at the 18th hole. She said I had a choice, retire quietly or disappear. I told her I would not be silenced. I told her I had already sent the letter. She just smiled. I think I'm in trouble." I closed the journal. I had my proof. Mr. Henderson had been murdered, and Eleanor Vance was the killer. I drove back to the motel, the journal hidden in my backpack. I called Sarah again. "I have the proof," I said. "Mr. Henderson was murdered. I have his journal." "You need to give that to the FBI," she said, her voice frantic. "You need to secure your protection. This is not a game anymore." "I know," I said, "but I need to do one more thing." I drove back to the city. I didn't go to the FBI. I went to Marcus Thorne, the journalist. I met him in a dark, empty parking garage. I handed him the journal. "This is the real story," I said. "The embezzlement was just the cover. The murder is the crime." He looked at the journal, his eyes wide. "This is huge," he whispered. "This is a Pulitzer." "I don't want a Pulitzer," I said. "I want justice, and I want to be safe." He promised me he would protect me. He promised me he would publish the story. I walked away, leaving him with the journal. I had done my part. I went to the FBI field office and turned myself in. I told them everything: the embezzlement, the frame job, the journal, the murder. They listened patiently, their faces unreadable. I spent the next 2 weeks in a safe house, giving depositions, answering questions, reliving the nightmare. The FBI arrested Eleanor Vance and Robert. The company was in shambles. The stock was worthless. The day the story broke, I was sitting in the safe house, watching the news. The headline was even bigger this time: "Corporate Murder Scandal Rocks Wall Street." I was a hero. I was a whistleblower. I was a multi-millionaire. I walked out of the safe house, a free man. I had lost my job, my career, and my old life, but I had gained something more valuable: my integrity. I had taken down the entire rotten structure, and I had done it alone. I bought a small house in Willow Creek, the town where I had first found my courage. I started a new life, a quiet life. I was a ghost, but I was a happy ghost. I had won the war, and I had won the battle. I still get emails from Sarah telling me about the fallout. Robert is in prison. Eleanor Vance is facing a life sentence. The company is bankrupt. The world is a little bit cleaner because of what I did. I look out the window of my new house over the quiet town. The sun is setting, and the sky is a brilliant orange. I have everything I need. I have my peace. Drop a comment with your platform of choice, like if you learned something new, share this post with friends, and subscribe for more social media comments.